Time to grade out Iowa's win against Maryland. What we saw on the field and doesn't match with the PFF numbers. Plus, a huge weekend in Hawkeye sports. We got basketball, men's and women's. We got wrestling. We got a little soccer. We got it all today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can kick off this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, it was a weekend of highs and lows, a win by the football team. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the women's basketball team. What an eye-opening performance as they're back in to the AP Top 25 for the first time this season with their undefeated start. Talk a little bit about the wrestling duel as Iowa makes it 20 in a row against Iowa State. But we begin today with what happened on Saturday as Iowa got the win against Maryland 29-13. Hawkeyes pick up their 7th win of the season and a lot of feel-good moments. In the tumultuous week that we saw inside of Iowa football and the Hanson Performance Center, there were a lot of question marks, obviously. And we talked about them here. Cade McNamara, he comes out with his release on Friday after the team had already departed. It didn't come through the university. Then they have to walk back the comments that Kirk made on Tuesday saying that he was cleared to practice but wasn't cleared to play. It was a lot. And as I mentioned in the Instant Reaction podcast, Everydayers, you heard that one, and you know it was just great to look back, get past all the extras, right? And just the guys that wanted to be there playing football and playing hard and playing for Coach Ferentz and playing for pride, because there isn't a whole lot there. There just is not a whole lot for this team to play for. The bowl destination, Tampa, Charlotte, maybe somewhere else. You're not playing for a division championship. There's nothing on the line as it pertains to the college football playoff. This has been a disappointing year, but for a day on the road to see this football team play well, to see this football team with their 5th string quarterback, with a banged up team that loses their best offensive lineman in Jennings Dunker, Jay Higgins out there playing hobbled, you lose your top cornerback, to have all this happening, and they just go out there and win. It was a great feeling, and definitely something that the guys that are there deserve. To have that good moment, to have just a good afternoon of playing football. Look, you're only guaranteed 12 of these, and with injuries, you're not even guaranteed that. But we know every single season there's going to be now 12 Iowa football games, and you hate to just flush one away. You hate to flush one away because of the disappointment. Look, this is how we go all season long, and it's about these moments. There's about these 12 opportunities that we have, and sometimes you get frustrated. Sometimes you can overlook what's actually going on inside the program and what these guys go through every single time. I mean, other good moments. Good one for me, getting to see Brevin Dahl out there on the travel team for the first time this season. And he's going to be a part of the mix starting next season at that running back spot. And a kid that I know since he was a little one, and just cool. And knowing the pride that his parents saw him out on the field again, seeing in Kinnick Stadium earlier this season, and now see him out there warming up with the team. And just those little moments that are there. And there's a bunch of them, and there's going to be more. And it's going to conclude on Friday night, and then Iowa will find out on Sunday what their bowl destination is going to be. I think with a win, they're locked in to go to Tampa, the old Outback Bowl, or LiaQuest Bowl. I think that is almost a certainty, certainly as long as we see 4 qualifiers out of the Big Ten in the college football playoff. We know the winner of Ohio State, Oregon, is in with the automatic bid, and they'll have a bye. The loser of that game is still going to be in. We're going to see Penn State in, and I think likely Indiana. The carnage of college football helped the Hoosiers. And then the pecking order begins. Illinois would be next up. They'll go to Citrus Bowl. Iowa's been there to Orlando, twice the last 3 years. They're not going back there. And then it's Outback. And as long as you beat Nebraska, I think you're going to be there. You're going to be 2 games clear of the Huskers, and that's going to be the destination. Now, you lose this game, I think we also know that there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of Nebraska fans are willing to travel. It's been 9 years, nearly a decade, since they've even qualified for a bowl game. A lot of pent up energy and probably a little extra money in those savings accounts too, and their bowl trips that they normally go on. Let's go back though one final time and look back at this Maryland game, and let's grade things out. So what we do each and every week here on Locked On Hawkeyes is we go through the grades that are handed out by Pro Football Focus and take a look to see if this grades out with the way that we saw things. So we open things up first on the offensive side of the football. And up first, of course, is the quarterback position as Jackson Stratton gets his first career start in a Hawkeye uniform. Pretty good. A 66 grade, that is typically average. Passing grade, 65.9, 65 on the run. Not a whole lot there. They didn't ask a whole lot of Jackson Stratton. And I think it's a fair grade for what we saw out of him. Tim Lester made the game plan for something that played to his strengths, used the big arm, don't go across the middle, guy with limited reps. You don't want to have him making a bunch of reads and having to go through a bunch of progressions. It was very simple. One read on the outside, they're longer throws, but because of his strong arm, you can make those throws and you go that direction. Great big game plan by Tim Lester and simplifying things for Jackson Stratton. The running back spot. So Kaleb Johnson grades out with a 73.1. And you just look through these numbers again. It was another great performance from him. He had the one play up the left side where he stiff arms two different guys on a 7-yard carry. He just a stud. I mean, just absolutely soak it in one final time against the Huskers coming up on Black Friday. That's going to be the last time we're going to see Kaleb Johnson in a Hawkeye uniform. Don't think he's going to play in the bowl game. I don't believe he's coming back for another season. I think it doesn't take a whole lot of a deep thinking to get to that level for either of those guys, either of those thoughts, and just enjoy number 2. He has been transcendent, an incredible player to watch, and it's been really good. Kamari Moulton grades out with a 55, but remember he had that fumble early in the game. Again, new quarterback, 5th quarterback. Probably not a whole lot of reps between those guys throughout the time, and that's what's going to happen from time to time. And Jazzion Patterson with a 53. Jumping over to wide receiver. One interesting note here. So, Kaden Weeden just played like a snap. He's top. Jake Gill's the top guy. Well, he had 4 catches in the game. All right, you understand that out of his 6 targets. So, he's the top guy at 59. Jared Bowie with the 57. And boy, I noticed throughout the game, man, I see number 0 out there a whole lot. What's Bowie? And he's played a ton. What I love, though, is seeing his run blocking grade was the best out of the wide receivers with a 64 as a run blocker at that. And I saw that. And I can see why he kind of fits with what Iowa wants to do. He's a bigger bodied receiver. I think there's more that he can build onto his frame. He's one to keep an eye on. And we're kind of hoping to build up that wide receiver room. He's a guy I think there's going to be some hope for going forward. Dayton Howard, same thing, another big bodied receiver that's out there, even bigger, at least in terms of stature, than Bowie, and one to keep an eye on. Tight end, the return of Luke Lachey and Addison Estrenga. So good to be out there, have both of those guys on the field together. We know the strength of this team, obviously, in the passing game is those two guys. And though it hasn't showed up in a big-time way, injuries have been a part of that throughout the course of the season. Now, Lachey grades out with a 51, Estrenga 50. Not very good grades for either of those guys. Frankly, I think that's dead wrong. Both those guys run blocking games were in the 40s. Come on. Again, I'm not grading every play. I watched the game again Sunday night for a second time. I saw those guys out there doing their thing and getting that back. And there was a reason this offensive line was able to move it forward. It was the help, I believe, of those tight ends. Finally, speaking of the offensive line, offensively, how about this? The top graded offensive lineman, the much maligned, including from yours truly, Nick DeYoung. He grades out with the 71. Has the best run blocking grade on the team on the offensive line, a passing grade over 80 in terms of pass blocking. Tip of the ball cap. Nick DeYoung came back for another year, didn't probably play nearly as much as he thought he was going to be because his offensive line's actually been healthy. Kudos to Nick DeYoung, sticking it out for one more year, coming back for one final season. That's another great story with this Iowa football team. Connor Colby up next. He was second on the list with the 68 grade. Logan Jones with the 65. Bo Stevens at 64. Not a great game for Mason Richmond. His big knock, he had the best pass blocking grade on the team, was his run blocking in that one. Still, when you pile up the yardage that they do, you will take it every single time. All right, just jumping over to the defensive side of the football as we continue. We got some basketball to get into, a little wrestling. We got a busy show here as we recap the weekend that was in Hawkeye athletics. Stay right there as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right there on the same page where you place your bets. I love the ability to dig a little bit deeper. Sometimes, and that's why we do these grades here on Locked On Hawkeyes, your eyes don't exactly match up with what's actually happening inside the statistical profile of a football game. It's all right there for you on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back with you one final time here, Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue. Basketball coming your way, a little wrestling. How about some soccer? We got a little bit of everything coming your way, but we wrap things up talking about the Iowa Hawkeye defense and the grades that were handed out from Pro Football Focus in the victory against Maryland. So starting right here, Iowa dominant in the first half, started to give up a couple of plays there during the third quarter, and all of a sudden it was a one-possession game. Oh boy, but Iowa responded. Moulton made the big play, but the defense overall played at a high level. And the highest level was Max Llewellyn. He grades out with an 85.5 grade, was getting to the quarterback. That spin move that he has is outstanding. He is just going to be, I believe, a dynamic player. And you couple him maybe with another edge rusher next season, somebody out of the transfer portal. I think you have something there if we do see, well, we know Deontay Craig is going to be departing and Ethan Herkett. Also, both those guys might be gone. But that aside, a great game out of Llewellyn. We've seen that throughout the course of this season. For him, it's going to be about going from playing 15, 20, 25 snaps a game. Can he become that full-time guy? We saw Joe Evans do that from where he was early in his career. And by the time he went through his final season a year ago, he had built himself into a full-time player. That'll be the next step for Max Llewellyn, but incredibly excited about the way that he has built himself up. Aaron Graves with a really good grade. That was good to see, a 78.7 for him. He was all over the place, running around, making some plays. Deontay Craig, it didn't get to the quarterback again. I thought he was excellent, though, on the outside, really being disruptive, and the grade certainly shows that, a 75.6 for Deontay Craig. Y.A. Black is next, 73.7. We talk about Y.A. all the time. It's not going to show up in the stat sheet the way that Iowa asks their defensive linemen to play, their defensive tackles to play, more importantly, but he just eats up so much space and makes it easier for those guys back behind him to make plays. Mentioned Ethan Herkett. He goes with a 65.5. Thought he was a tick better than that. Jeremiah Pittman with a 65. I saw Pittman out there quite a bit throughout the course of the game. He's going to be a real important piece to next season, likely going to be a starter for Iowa next year. And finally, Brian Allen, we're waiting for it all to click. He's going to be an important one to build into next year for that front. But just great overall out of the defensive line, really high level out of them. Llewellyn had quarterback pressures with 3, hits with 2, and had a sack, as he is up to 4.5 sacks now on the season. Jay Higgins, stud, 82.3 grade. It's probably better than that. Playing on the bad hamstring, guts it out, toughs it out. Iowa football embodied with Jay Higgins. Nick Jackson, a good grade from him. Pass rush with a 90 grade. Didn't blitz a whole lot, but when he did, he was getting home. 78.6 overall from him. Saw a little bit of Kyler Fisher as well. He grades out with a 65. And finally, defensive back. And that was a question coming into this game. As we know, there is no Jamari Harris, and likely not going to be Jamari Harris for the rest of the season. Deshaun Lee, he grades out as the top defensive back with a 71. Tackle grade really high for Deshaun Lee. Quinn Schulte was up next with a 65. Then TJ Hall. Thought TJ Hall had some really good moments, not just the interception, but just running stride for stride against a really talented receiver in Ty Felton for Maryland. He's going to be a guy that's going to be in the NFL next season. And TJ Hall, I thought, showed a lot of good things there. Next up is Cohen Entringer. Zach Lutmer played a little bit. Sebastian Castro down with a 60 grade. Xavier Wampa at the bottom of the list with a 58.4. Need to get Xavier Wampa playing at a high level going into next season. Need to deliver that 5-star billing, certainly for him. And we go through all these grades, and the one grade that we don't have is special teams. Pro Football Focus doesn't put out special teams grades. 5 for 5 field goals, though. Obviously, Drew Stevens was one of the stories of the game. And in fact, today he was named Special Teams Player of the Week in the Big Ten after his big performance for that one. Earlier today on my radio program, my radio partner, Ken Miller, you can catch us on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, flagship KXNO in Des Moines from noon to 2, and across in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Quad Cities, and Sioux City. You can catch our show each and every weekday from noon to 2. He brought up, Drew Stevens. Is he going to have a decision to make coming up this season? We see the strong leg that he has. I don't believe so. I don't think that this is going to be a guy that is going to have NFL suitors calling him up and potentially drafting. Look, we know making an NFL roster as a kicker is incredibly difficult. You go through some of the great kickers that Iowa's had, and outside of Nate Kading, opportunities are few and far between. There's only 32 of the jobs. They're not going to waste many practice squad spots for those guys at the next level. It's a very vagabond life. You're trying to find a way to get it done, and because of all that, the likelihood, I think, is pretty low. Even with that strong leg, had the issues at the end of last season when he lost his confidence and eventually lost his gig for the kick against Nebraska a season ago. How about that? How about a redemption story? We've seen recently this Iowa-Nebraska game going to come down to the wire. I anticipate nothing different on Friday night at Kinnick Stadium. Cold weather, I think it's going to be one that's going to come down. And we'll talk more about the game as we move a little bit closer and closer to the game throughout the course of the week. But that aside, I truly believe that Drew Stevens will be back next season, even with that big leg, but we'll see. Not evaluator, don't know how it goes. Torrey Taylor, we can see, and the Bears use a 4th-round draft pick on him. Don't see the same kind of path for Drew Stevens, but we'll keep an eye on that one. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. We got some basketball to get into. In fact, let's go right there. As we're taking a look back, let's go back to Friday night as the men fall to Utah State. An incredibly frustrating game. So I was calling the 5A state championship game one of the best state championship games you're going to find, with Southeast Polk winning their 4th in a row over West Des Moines Valley. But had the game on, wasn't able to see a ton of it throughout the course of it, but watched it when I got home. And one thing I saw Friday night when I got back from Cedar Falls is this team really needs Seydou Traore. I looked at the way that Iowa played in the second half. So there was a report, I think it was Elliot Clough from Hawkeye Beacon, that mentioned he had that massage gun in his hand and he was working on his leg with that, because without him, without his athleticism, this becomes, frankly, just kind of a standard Fran team, right? What we were getting excited about is seeing him along with Thelwell and the defensive intensity that they brought, the athleticism that they brought to the team, and it just became a different looking team than Iowa basketball. They need him. They need him healthy. And really, as a whole, they need this team to get healthy. Josh Dix, pretty ineffective. He just plays 20 minutes of the game as he's dealing with some injuries. 2 of 7 from the floor, doesn't make a three-pointer, 0 for 4. Peyton Sanford just kept chucking. So he's got the tape up on his shoulder. He's got a wrist injury. I mean, he's incredibly banged up. He's 1 of 13 from three-point. There's just times. They're good shots when he can make them, but when you're banged up, they might not be good shots. Owen Freeman did his thing, 18 and 11. Brock Harding had a good offensive game. And another interesting angle is they played Thelwell together a lot with Brock Harding. Now, the Dix injury, Sanford, though he played 36 minutes of the game, I think that was also pieces of it. But we'll see going forward if that's going to be a lineup that they're playing with a bunch, or if that was just kind of a one-time thing. Didn't shoot the ball well. Just didn't shoot it well. And I think it's as simple as that. Not going to be many times that Peyton Sanford goes 1 of 13. Not going to be many times that Josh Dix goes 0 for 4. Got to get those healthy. And we'll see tomorrow night. So they take on USC Upstate. I think I got that right. South Carolina Upstate. And it's another bye game. It's another one that Iowa should win by 25, 30 points. But you got a week break then afterwards. And with a week break, before you have your Big Ten opener against Northwestern, does it make sense with all these guys injured? Can Iowa get by without Sanford, without Dix, not playing both of those, maybe even without Traore? You would hope so. But I remember when Iowa had that happen a few years back against Western Illinois, and they played that game without Connor McCaffrey and was it Keegan or Chris? Regardless, Didn't play in the game, they got beat. Now, Iowa still got in the NCAA tournament, but that was a huge drag on their net. The thing is, Iowa, I don't think they're going to be in a position that they can afford a loss against a terrible bye team. They were able to overcome it that season, but you're talking about threading the needle to do that and picking up the necessary victories end of the Big Ten. Who is the most banged up? Is it going to help to give them a week break? Can he beat South Carolina upstate without these guys? I mean, these are all questions that I'm sure Fran McCaffrey and the staff are kind of contemplating and figuring out in this one. The other component to the game, and this is something that I mentioned going in, and that's why I was concerned about Iowa against Utah State, is the rebounding. And this is not a very good rebounding team. We talked about this a ton last year. Ben Krikke just was not a good rebounder. As the center, he wasn't a good rebounder. And this team, really outside of Owen Freeman right now, they're not rebounding at a good rate. Now they're getting out rebounded by these bye games. It can't happen. And what can be done to combat that? As I've said, I believe that Laje Dabali should be the backup 5. Play a little bit at the 4, but mostly that should be his role. If you're doing that, though, can you rebound with a guy like Traore at the power forward position? Sanford is a pretty good rebounder for 2 guard, but you need more. I don't know. I don't have a great elixir, and I hate to go with I don't know on that front, but that's where I am. They just have to be better. They have to be a better rebounding team than they have been 6 games into the season. Bye game this week. Get it done against USC Upstate, and then it will be Northwestern next Tuesday on December 3rd. They'll get that one at Carver, followed up by the road trip out to Michigan, and then the return. December 12th, the big one, with Iowa State coming to town. The Cyclones are out in Maui right now as they'll take on Auburn here this evening. With that, let's continue Locked On Hawkeyes with more basketball. Let's take a look at the women's team, and we got to talk about the wrestlers making it 20 in a row against Iowa State. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Gametime is the place to go when you're looking to find tickets. It's not just sports. They got you covered there. Football, basketball, you name it, they have it on the Gametime app. But theater tickets, comedy tickets, anything you can imagine, they got you covered on the Gametime app. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. I love the ability to go through and find exactly what you want and know exactly what you're paying. Toggling the all-in pricing feature shows you the total up front. No more surprise fees at checkout. I love that part of it. Finding the right deal for you. It's absolutely perfect on the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Back with you one final time. I'm Trent Condon. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. All right, let's jump into a little more basketball. And I want to start first with a look at the women's basketball team and what they did yesterday in the dominating win against Washington State. Now, Washington State, we talked about them when the men played them, but remember, this is a program that is going through a transition, going from the Pac-12, making the move now to the WCC, and they'll go back to the Pac-12. It's odd. It's odd. But Iowa did whatever they wanted. It was just the defense that we saw out of this squad. And you wonder if this team can be a little bit different. Look, they didn't shoot it well. 2 of 17 from behind the arc, 12 of 21 from the free throw line. You don't shoot it well. And yet in a game like that, for Iowa to win a game by 29 against anybody, I think says a whole lot about this Iowa basketball team and at least the chance that they have throughout the course of this season. They are different. It's not the high-flying Hawkeyes. And I also wonder, if we go back, Jan Jensen, she mentioned in her introductory press conference about liking to maybe show a little bit more pressure, doing some more full court press and three-quarter court press and doing different things that Lisa Bluter just wasn't a fan of. And if we're going to see that on the defensive end of the floor, Jan is a post. Jan was a post as a player, and she was a post coach for her decades now on the bench. That's where it is. And I'm sure it goes hand in hand. Coaching the bigs is some of the defense that goes along with it. And if we're going to see with more and more of these players making their way in, more athleticism being added to the lineup, if that's going to be something that is going to be able to happen, that we're going to see a team that is better on the defensive end of the floor, because that just wasn't the case for this Iowa team. We'll see on that front. Iowa, led by Lucy Olson, a big performance out of her again. 17 points in the game, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, just controls the pace incredibly well, knocks down a three-pointer, and her along with Jana Gyamfi. If you had that for the only 2 players with a three-pointer in this one, that parlay probably would have paid you incredibly well. We'll see now for this Iowa women's basketball team, because the waters are going to get a little bit deeper. After a matchup on Thursday on Thanksgiving against Rhode Island, they got BYU, Tennessee, Iowa State, Big Ten opener against Michigan State on the road, that UNI team that beat Iowa State, Purdue after that, and the Big Ten slate will really begin in earnest. I like the makeup of the team. I like the way that they're playing. I'm intrigued, I'll say, about the defense and what they can be on that end of the floor. And finally, the Iowa Wrestlers with the win on Saturday night. BTN Plus had it, which stinks. I get it. I have BTN Plus myself, but I know it's not something that is for people. And for wrestling meet that matters so much in our state, what wrestling means in the state of Iowa, that was disappointing. I know it's another money grab, right? Another opportunity to make a couple more bucks. All right. Cyclone fans, if they wanted to watch it, they had to pay too. All right, we'll get their $10. And I know, old guy yelling into a microphone. I miss the days of IPTV. I'm sure I'm not alone on that one. We had the meets on there. Was it last year? The meet at Iowa State when they put it on ESPN, how cool that was. Disappointing, but that aside. Iowa gets the win. We'll see about Teamer. So we had the hamstring. Haven't heard anything yet today. Looked to be pretty significant. He tried to gut it out there, just couldn't make a push off, couldn't get any kind of power on that leg, and you saw him really struggling with that. Some really nice victories, though. I think Ayala, that was definitely one of the brightest spots for me, and what he was able to do, bumping up to 33. So this wrestling team, it's different. Having the 3 transfers come in, built a little bit different way, but that's all right. Can they compete with Penn State? That's going to remain the great question, but there's some dudes in that room. There's some dudes in that wrestling room, need to be healthy. No doubt Ferrari getting his debut, Angelo, and blowing a kiss. There's always something in this duel, isn't there? And Iowa appears to be in good shape for another good season. Will it be good enough? We'll talk about that more here in the future weeks. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. And don't forget, we got you covered. Your favorite team. Doesn't matter if it's NFL, NBA, MLB, got you covered there. Plus, we got our conference-specific ones, Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman, Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Women's College Basketball. Just a whole lot going on across the Locked On Network, and we got you covered with your team every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.